there are definitely high trust organizations and low trust organizations. I mean, we can see that very clearly. There are organizations where people are energized, they are passionate, they are idealistic, they are committed, they have a sense of fun. And there are other organizations where everybody is suspicious and low energy and hostile and so forth. So we can see the impact and the evidence of a lack of trust or a high degree of trust. I think the challenge really, and that's part of this moonshot, is to say how do you take a culture in which trust has been severely damaged? Because it is possible to destroy what has taken decades to build up. It is possible to destroy that very quickly. I look at a company like Home Depot, which has gone through some wrenching change in the last decade or so under new leadership. They had the family leadership for many years, and then they brought in an outside CEO who completely changed the culture and in fact probably eroded some of the trust, etc., that existed within that, created a culture of fear and had extremely high turnover at that time. And now that the leadership has been replaced, the biggest task of that new leader is to rebuild that sense of trust, because with the loss of trust also went their reputation for customer service, with also employee morale plummeted and so forth. So that's one of the signature challenges, I think, for any new leader coming into that kind of a situation, is how do you rebuild a sense of trust? It's like somebody who's been, as they say, once burned, twice shy. The employees who managed to survive the ordeal, which may have cost many of their friends and colleagues their jobs, but they themselves are deeply suspicious and cynical, and they're not really willing to listen. And I think earning their trust and demonstrating that the leader is worthy of that trust is something that is not an easy thing to do. I was reading a case study recently about Siemens and Nixdorf when Siemens bought that company, and they had gone through tremendous change, and about 30-40% of the employees had been terminated prior to that. A new CEO came in and really opened up the process and started listening to employees and started really a sort of a ground up process for reinventing the company and figuring out how they could compete in the future, and involved everybody and had a very open and fair and transparent process whereby people could be heard and those ideas could bubble up and ultimately get selected in terms of which ones had the most promise and so forth. And that business ultimately turned around in a matter of years, and the culture got transformed quite significantly as a result of that. But again, it takes a visionary leader who's willing to let go of that top-down kind of way of thinking and allow people really to have a voice and to participate in the future of the business. If you look at, for example, Whole Foods. Whole Foods is a company that has been around now for about 25 years. It is the leader in the organic and natural food space. It has taken as its higher purpose the mission that they want to educate people that what they put into their body makes a difference to their health and the health of the food system and the health of the planet as a whole. And they've actually implemented that very effectively and made a difference to the food system. They've actually had a sort of trickle-down effect in the food system as a whole. So even though they remain a relatively small part of the food system, they have impacted much larger players than themselves. Whole Foods is a culture that is characterized by a high degree of trust, and you see it reflected in their statement, which you will find on their website. It's called the Declaration of Interdependence. And they say we are all interdependent and interconnected with each other. In other words, the employees depend on each other, but not just the employees, customers depend on the employees depend on the customers, we depend on our suppliers, we depend on our communities, and vice versa. So they have that understanding of interconnectedness and interdependence, and that is the very essence of a trust-based culture. Because when you do have interdependence, it means that you have mutual vulnerability. It means that you are in fact counting on somebody else to do things that impact your well-being as well. And likewise, you're doing things that are impacting everybody else. So if you don't have high degree of trust in that kind of environment, it is simply not going to work. Another company that we have is the Container Store, which is also a retailer. The Container Store again operates with a very high degree of trust. If you look at the amount of openness and transparency that is prevalent in that company, it's a private company, and yet they share all the information with all the employees in terms of their financials, in terms of how they're doing in the marketplace and so forth. So there's a great degree of transparency. There's an open door policy with the leadership of that company. So again, a distinctly high trust type of a culture is an operation there. Southwest Airlines is another company that has demonstrated over its history a high degree of trust with its employees. Even though it is a unionized airline, you really don't find the kind of antagonistic relationship between labor and management that you find at some companies. And they have recognized that loyalty and trust are two-way streets. A lot of companies expect loyalty and they expect trust from their employees, but they don't actually reciprocate those things. And Southwest Airlines has done it time and again. So every time there's a downturn in the industry, other airlines take the short-term steps of laying off employees and closing down certain operations and so forth. Southwest Airlines has always operated from a longer-term perspective and believed in the notion of collective sacrifice and riding through these kinds of downturns. So after 9/11, they were the only airline that actually did not lay off any of their employees. And then they reap the benefit when the market turns around in a dramatic fashion. And you see the same thing happening at other companies as well. REI is another company that we've looked at. So again, all of these companies are characterized by high degrees of trust, which has been earned steadily and slowly over time. These were not things that happened overnight. They are the result of thousands upon thousands of cumulative actions taken by leaders in these businesses, especially in tough times. Those are the times that really test whether the companies are going to stick to what they profess. It's always easy to do that when everything is going well.